In the cold expanse of the Siren warship, deep within the cargo hold, the ancient war beast stirred. It was a creature of legend, massive, fierce, and bred for destruction. Its body was covered in thick dark scales, and its glowing yellow eyes scanned the darkened cell as it awoke from its centuries-long slumber. The Siren, a race known for their brutal tactics and conquests, had once used this beast to dominate entire planets, but now they only kept it alive for intimidation and as a last resort. The beast had grown hungrier over the years, uncontrollable and dangerous. But today the warlords of the Siren had a new plan. The beast would be fed to restore its strength. A small group of Siren leaders stood on a high platform overlooking the arena where the beast was held. In their grasp was a human child, a girl no more than 6 years old. Her blonde hair was tangled, her face streaked with dirt and tears as she was dragged forward. "We must appease the creature," one of the warlords said coldly. "The human child will suffice. It hasn't eaten in decades." The leader of the warlords, tall and imposing, raised his hand. "Release the child." The guards roughly pushed the little girl into the arena, and she stumbled forward, her wide blue eyes taking in the terrifying sight of the beast emerging from the shadows. She stood frozen, trembling with fear. The warlords watched in anticipation, expecting the inevitable. The beast would devour her in moments. The beast's massive head lowered, its nostrils flaring as it caught her scent. The creature's enormous claws scraped the ground and its eyes locked onto the child. The warlords waited, ready to witness the carnage. But instead of attacking, the war beast paused. It stood still, towering over the tiny girl, and for the first time in its long, violent existence, something else flickered behind its predatory gaze, a hesitation. The beast tilted its head slightly, its sharp teeth glinting in the dim light as it sniffed the air around the child. The girl, terrified but sensing something unusual in the creature's behavior, took a small, shaky step backward, but she did not scream. Instead, her wide, tear-filled eyes met the beast's. Her tiny voice, barely above a whisper, trembled as she spoke. "Please, don't hurt me." The warlords stared in shock from their perch above. The beast had never hesitated before. It was an ancient, ruthless killing machine, a force of raw destruction that responded to instinct alone. But now, it simply stood there watching the child, its claws still, its hunger momentarily forgotten. The silence was deafening as the warlords exchanged confused glances. This was not what they had expected. The child, her heart pounding, slowly extended her hand, unsure of why she felt compelled to do so. Her fingers, small and delicate, reached out toward the beast's massive snout, and for a moment she thought the creature would snap at her, that its teeth would close around her in an instant. But instead, the war beast lowered its head further, allowing her touch. Her tiny hand brushed against the rough, scaled surface of its nose, and the beast let out a low, rumbling sound that echoed through the arena. It was not a growl of hunger or aggression, but something gentler, almost a purr. The girl's fear began to ebb as she whispered, "You're not going to hurt me, are you?" The beast impossibly seemed to understand. It blinked slowly, its yellow eyes softening as it settled its giant frame onto the ground, curling its legs beneath it. It lay still, resting its enormous head near the girl, its gaze never leaving her. The Siren warlords looked on in disbelief. One of them, a high-ranking official, slammed his fist onto the railing. "What is this? Why does the beast not attack?" "Perhaps it senses something in the human child," another warlord suggested, though even he sounded unsure. "This is unacceptable," the leader barked. "The beast must obey its nature. It cannot be tamed." But down in the arena, the girl remained beside the creature, her tiny hand still resting on its snout. Her breathing slowed as her initial terror faded. She began to speak to the beast in soft, halting words, as if she were talking to an old, misunderstood friend. "I'm Lily," she whispered. "What's your name? Do you even have a name?" The war beast rumbled in response, shifting slightly but remaining calm. To Lily, the rumble sounded comforting, like the hum of an old engine warming up. She felt an unexpected sense of safety in the presence of this enormous creature, as if it had chosen to protect her rather than harm her. From the platform above, the warlords continued to watch in stunned silence, their plan to feed the beast unraveling before their eyes. "Why isn't it devouring her?" one of the warlords hissed. "It's a fluke," the leader growled. "It cannot last. The beast will tire of her and feed soon enough." But deep down, the warlords knew something had changed. For the first time in its existence, the ancient war beast had defied its purpose. It had chosen not to destroy, but to protect. And for little Lily, in that moment, a fragile but profound bond was born between a young human child and the fearsome war beast, one that would soon shake the foundations of the Xiran Empire. The days passed slowly for Lily, but the bond between her and the ancient war beast, whom she now called Thorn because of the sharp spikes on its back, grew stronger with every interaction. Thorn, once a feared instrument of destruction, had become something else entirely in Lily's presence. His once mighty form, scarred from centuries of battle, now moved gently around the little girl as though she were the most precious thing in the universe. The Xiran warlords, observing from their chambers high above the arena, grew restless and confused. They had expected the beast to devour Lily, to reawaken its primal hunger for carnage. Instead, they saw it lying beside her, responding to her voice, allowing her to touch it without the slightest hint of aggression. The warlords had never seen anything like it. "We need to understand why the beast does not attack," one of the warlords grumbled during their meeting. "It defies all logic." The leader, his face twisted in frustration, leaned back in his chair, staring at the holographic display of the arena where Lily and Thorn rested side by side. "Perhaps it's the girl. The beast has never encountered anything like her before. It's possible that this human child has somehow formed a bond with it." The other warlords exchanged uneasy glances. The idea that a simple child could tame a creature that had laid waste to entire worlds was unthinkable. "But why?" another warlord asked. "Why would a beast bred for war show mercy to a human, of all creatures?" "We will find out soon enough," the leader declared. "Let the girl stay with the beast. Perhaps she will reveal its weakness." Despite their confusion and frustration, the Xiran warlords decided to keep Lily alive for the time being. They hoped that by observing the child, they could uncover the key to controlling Thorn. If they could manipulate this strange bond between the girl and the war beast, they believed they could harness Thorn's power more effectively than ever before. Meanwhile, in the arena, Lily spent her days with Thorn, unaware of the warlord's plans. She talked to him constantly, telling him stories about her life on Earth, about her family, her school, and her love for animals. She would rest her small body against Thorn's thick, armored side, tracing patterns on his scales with her fingers. "You're not really bad, are you, Thorn?" Lily asked one day as she played with a strand of her tangled hair. "They just don't understand you." Thorn, as if in response, let out a low rumble, his massive body shifting slightly beneath her touch. His large yellow eyes, once filled with rage and hunger, seemed softer now, almost calm. He had been bred for destruction, yet something about this tiny human had awakened a different instinct in him. An instinct to protect. As the bond between them deepened, the warlords began experimenting with ways to manipulate Lily. They gave her small tasks, testing whether her connection with Thorn could be used to their advantage. "Tell the beast to destroy that pillar," one warlord ordered one day, his voice crackling through a hidden speaker in the arena. Lily, frowning, turned to Thorn. "They want you to break the pillar," she said softly, pointing to a large stone column that stood at the edge of the arena. Thorn hesitated, his eyes shifting between Lily and the pillar. After a moment, he swung his massive tail and shattered the column with one powerful blow, the debris crashing to the ground with a deafening roar. The warlords watching from above exchanged triumphant looks. "It works," one of them said. "The child can control the beast." But Lily wasn't happy. She could feel that Thorn didn't want to destroy anything. He was doing it because she had asked him to, and though the warlords cheered at their success, she knew that this wasn't right. "They're using us, Thorn," Lily whispered as she sat beside him later that day, her small hand resting on his snout. "But I won't let them keep doing this. We need to get out of here." Thorn's eyes met hers, and though he couldn't speak, Lily understood. He was ready to follow her anywhere. In that moment, Lily made a decision. She would protect Thorn, just as he had protected her. The warlords may have thought they could manipulate them, but they had underestimated the bond between a child and a beast who only wanted to be free. As the night fell and the warlords retired to their chambers, Lily quietly began to formulate a plan. She didn't know how, but she was going to escape this place, and she was taking Thorn with her. The cold, metallic halls of the Xiran warship hummed with a constant low vibration. a reminder to Lily of the vastness of space surrounding them. Each day she spent with Thorn in the arena, growing more determined to free both of them from the warlord's cruel manipulation. She knew she had to be careful. Any wrong move, and the warlords would likely take her away from Thorn, or worse. One evening, as the warlords observed from their high platform, Lily noticed something peculiar. The Dairon soldiers who usually guarded the exits of the arena seemed more relaxed, their attention drifting as if they'd grown complacent. They no longer saw her as a threat, just a human child, small and helpless. That would be their mistake. As she sat beside Thorn, resting against his massive scaled body, she whispered her plan to him. "Thorn, we need to leave. I've been watching them, and I think we have a chance to escape soon." Thorn rumbled in response, his golden eyes following Lily's every word. Though the beast didn't fully understand her language, there was a deep connection between them, an unspoken understanding. Thorn had grown protective of the child, and wherever she went, he would follow. Lily had watched the warlords closely, noting the times when they were most distracted and the layout of the ship from their frequent marches through its labyrinthine corridors. She knew she would have to rely on her wits and Thorn's strength to make it out. Over the next few days, Lily quietly gathered information, studying the patterns of the guards and the timing of their shifts. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. She had one shot, and if it failed, the warlords would ensure she and Thorn would never be together again. One evening, while the arena was quieter than usual, Lily leaned close to Thorn. "Tomorrow night, when the guards change shifts and the warlords are in their meeting, that's when we'll go. We have to be fast, Thorn. I need you to break through the gate at the back of the arena. It's the weakest point." Thorn let out a soft growl, a signal that he was ready. Together, they would make their escape. The following night, everything was in place. The warlords had retreated to their command chamber for their nightly council, and the guards at the arena seemed even more inattentive than usual. Lily's heart raced as she glanced at Thorn, giving him a small nod. It was time. With a deep breath, she whispered, "Now, Thorn." The massive beast rose slowly, its towering form casting long shadows across the arena. Lily stood beside him, her eyes locked on the weak section of the gate she had noticed during their time together. Thorn understood immediately and, with a powerful swipe of his tail, smashed the gate into pieces. The sound echoed through the arena like a thunderclap, and alarms blared instantly. Lily jumped onto Thorn's back, gripping tightly as the beast moved with surprising speed through the shattered gate. The guards, caught off guard by the sudden commotion, scrambled to their feet, shouting and firing energy weapons at Thorn, but their shots bounced harmlessly off his thick armored hide. "Hold on, Thorn, we need to find the docking bay," Lily shouted as they barreled down the corridors of the ship, Thorn charging forward with unstoppable force. He swatted away obstacles with ease, his claws tearing through metal walls like paper. As they ran, the warlords' voices crackled through the ship's intercom. "Stop them! Don't let the beast escape. Capture the girl at all costs." Lily's pulse quickened, but she stayed focused. "It's just ahead, Thorn. Keep going." The Aziran soldiers blocked the corridors, trying desperately to slow them down, but Thorn was too powerful, too determined to let anything stand in his way. He bellowed, charging through the lines of alien soldiers like they were nothing more than fragile toys. The force of his roar sent tremors through the ship, and the sound of his claws tearing into the walls was deafening. At last they reached the docking bay. Lily spotted a small escape pod at the far end of the room, and relief washed over her. But as they approached, she realized the tragic truth. Thorn would never fit inside the pod. He was too large, too massive for any human-sized vessel. Her heart clenched, tears stinging her eyes. She turned to Thorn, who had already stopped, sensing the same problem. "No, you have to come with me," she cried, her voice breaking. "I can't leave you here, Thorn." The war beast lowered his head gently, nudging Lily with his snout. His golden eyes, full of sorrow and understanding, met hers. He let out a soft growl, urging her toward the escape pod. Lily sobbed, realizing what Thorn was telling her. He was staying behind so she could be free. He was sacrificing his freedom for hers. "I won't forget you," she whispered, pressing her small hand against his rough scales. "I promise, I'll never forget you." With one last heart-wrenching look, Lily climbed into the escape pod. As the doors sealed shut, She watched Thorn turn to face the approaching Jiren soldiers. His stance was one of defiance, his eyes burning with the fire of a beast who had finally chosen its path. He would fight not for war or destruction, but for the one he had come to protect. The pod launched, and through the small window, Lily watched as Thorn roared, the sound echoing across the vast docking bay as he charged into battle. Her tears flowed freely now, knowing that this was goodbye. But as the stars stretched out before her and the ship grew smaller in the distance, Lily made a vow to herself. She would tell the world about Thorn, the war beast who had chosen love over violence, friendship over fear. Thorn had given her freedom, and she would make sure his story lived on. As the escape pod streaked into the vastness of space, Lily could still hear the echoes of Thorn's mighty roar reverberating in her heart. She wiped the tears from her eyes, but the sadness weighed heavily on her. Her small hands gripped the controls of the pod, and she tried to focus on navigating to safety, but all she could think of was Thorn, standing alone in that docking bay, facing the oncoming onslaught of the Jiren soldiers. Inside the warship, the scene was far from calm. The Jiren soldiers, clad in their dark armor, closed in on Thorn, but they underestimated the war beast's resolve. Thorn had always been a creature of power and destruction, but something had changed in him since meeting Lily. He wasn't fighting for dominance anymore. He was fighting for her, for the small girl who had shown him kindness and compassion when no one else had. The first wave of Jiren soldiers advanced, their energy weapons flashing in the dim light of the docking bay. Thorn roared, the sound shaking the entire chamber. His massive claws tore through the floor as he charged, a force of nature unleashed. The soldiers fired at him, but their weapons barely made a mark on his thick, scaled hide. Thorn plowed through them with unstoppable force, sending armored bodies flying in every direction. The Jiren warlords watched from their command center, their faces twisted in frustration and fear. The leader, furious at the failure to control the beast, slammed his fist onto the table. It's not supposed to act like this. The creature was bred for war, not for loyalty to a mere human child. But Thorn was no longer their weapon. He had become something more, something driven by love rather than fear. Each swipe of his claws and every strike of his tail was a testament to his newfound purpose. He would fight until the very end, not for the Jiren, but for the promise he made to Lily. More soldiers poured into the docking bay, but Thorn stood his ground. He knew this was his last stand, but he didn't care. As long as Lily was free, it was worth every moment of pain, every last ounce of his strength. Far away, inside the escape pod, Lily gazed out the window as the Jiren warship grew smaller and smaller. She felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness wash over her. She was safe now, but the thought of leaving Thorn behind was unbearable. He had sacrificed everything for her, and now he was facing the full wrath of the Jiren on his own. Lily clenched her fists, her small face hardening with determination. "I won't let them forget you, Thorn," she whispered. "I'll tell everyone what you did for me." The escape pod systems beeped softly as it entered the range of a human outpost. A few minutes later, the pod was intercepted by a human rescue ship. The crew, shocked to find a lone child inside, immediately brought Lily aboard and rushed her to safety. As they examined her for injuries, Lily insisted on speaking with the captain. "You have to listen to me," she said, her voice urgent despite her exhaustion. "There's a creature on that ship, a war beast, but he's not what they think he is. He saved me." The captain, a stern-looking woman with kind eyes, knelt beside Lily. "Tell me what happened, child." Lily recounted her entire story, how the Jiren had taken her, how they had tried to feed her to Thorn, and how, instead of devouring her, the war beast had befriended her and protected her. The crew listened in stunned silence as Lily described the great sacrifice Thorn had made to ensure her escape. "He's still there, fighting them off so I could get away," Lily said, her eyes brimming with tears again. "You have to help him." The captain stood and exchanged a glance with her officers. "We'll do everything we can," she promised. "We've already sent word to Earth Command about the HFY. Your story might change everything." As the ship prepared to head back to Earth, Lily felt a mix of hope and sadness. She had escaped, but Thorn's fate was uncertain. Still, she knew one thing. The galaxy would know what Thorn had done. His legacy wouldn't end on that warship. Days later, when Lily finally reached Earth, she was taken in by human authorities, her story spreading quickly through the ranks of those who had long fought against the Jiren. She recounted every detail to military officials, scientists, and reporters, ensuring that Thorne's sacrifice would not be forgotten. In the quiet moments when she was alone, she would look up at the stars, wondering if Thorne was still out there, fighting. She hoped somehow that he had survived, and if not, she would carry his memory with her for the rest of her life, a memory of a beast who had defied his nature, choosing love and friendship over violence. In her heart, she knew she would never stop telling his story. Thorne's roar would echo forever, not in battle, but in the hearts of those who heard of his bravery. Back aboard the Xiran warship, Thorne's final battle raged on. The once proud soldiers, who had believed their war beast invincible, now trembled as they watched the creature fight not for them, but against them. Thorne had become a living storm of fury, tearing through wave after wave of Xiran warriors, refusing to relent even as his body began to show signs of exhaustion. The warlords stood in their command chamber, their arrogance replaced by fear. They had long believed the beast was their ultimate weapon, bound only to destruction at their will. Now they saw the truth. Thorne had a will of his own, and that will was far stronger than anything they could have controlled. "We have to put it down," the leader snarled. "Prepare the energy cannons." The cannons, massive energy weapons that lined the ship's internal defenses, were designed to stop any intruder. They had never been used against Thorne, but the warlords saw no other option. Desperation filled the room as they activated the cannons and trained them on the docking bay. Below, Thorne was beginning to tire. His once powerful strikes were slower now, his roars weaker, but the beast still stood tall. His massive form, battered and bleeding from countless energy blasts, blocked the path to the ship's main systems, preventing the Xiran soldiers from reaching the escape pod launch controls. Thorne's yellow eyes flickered as he caught sight of the enormous energy cannons charging up, aimed directly at him. He growled, knowing what was coming. This was the end. The cannons fired, beams of white-hot energy surging toward Thorne. In a last act of defiance, the war beast let out a final, earth-shattering roar that shook the entire ship. His body absorbed the blasts, his thick scales burning under the intense heat. But he did not fall. Thorne stood tall, his head raised high, a symbol of resistance and loyalty. Even in death, he refused to let them win. The Xiran warlords watched in stunned silence as Thorne, their ancient weapon of war, finally collapsed, his massive body crashing to the ground with a thunderous impact. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of scorched metal. But Thorne's last stand had not been in vain. The Xiran soldiers retreated, shaken by what they had witnessed. This beast, bred for destruction, had chosen to fight for something greater than itself. The warlords had lost more than a weapon that day. They had lost their pride, their control, and their belief in absolute power. Far away, Lily sat in a quiet room on Earth, staring out the window at the night sky. She had been back on her home planet for several weeks now, her life a blur of interviews and debriefings. The authorities had treated her kindly, but the weight of Thorne's absence hung heavily on her heart. She had told his story to everyone who would listen, about how the Xiran had tried to use him as a weapon, and how, in the end, he had chosen to save her instead of following his violent nature. Thorne had given everything for her freedom, and she would make sure the world knew about it. The human military had even begun planning rescue missions, but Lily knew in her heart that Thorne was gone. The last time she had seen him, standing tall and defiant in the face of overwhelming odds, she knew that he had fought his final battle. He had chosen to protect her, and that choice had cost him his life. But even in her sadness, Lily felt a deep sense of gratitude. Thorne had taught her something that she would carry with her forever, that even the most feared creatures could choose love over hate, and that bravery wasn't about strength, but about the choices you made for others. The door to Lily's room creaked open, and the captain who had rescued her stepped inside. She smiled kindly, sitting beside Lily on the edge of her bed. "I thought you'd want to know," the captain began gently. "We've received confirmation from our sources. Thorne didn't make it." Lily's chest tightened, but she nodded, having already come to terms with the truth. "I figured," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you for telling me." The captain placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "He saved you, Lily. He saved a lot of people. Because of him, the Xiran are pulling back from their expansion. They're reconsidering their entire military strategy." Lily blinked in surprise. What do you mean? The Siren were shaken by what happened with Thorn. Their warlords never thought a creature like him could form a bond with a human, let alone sacrifice himself for one. It's changed the way they see us, the way they see themselves. Thorn's story is spreading, even among their ranks. Lily wiped at her eyes, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and pride. He was a hero, she whispered. More than that, the captain said. He was a symbol of something greater, something even the Shiren couldn't control. His choice to protect you over everything else is making them rethink what they stand for. Lily's heart swelled with emotion. She had always known that Thorn was special, but to hear that his actions had impacted not just her, but an entire species was overwhelming. She smiled faintly, remembering the warmth she had felt whenever she was near him. As the captain stood to leave, she added one final thought. Lily, Thorn will be remembered for what he did. Not just by us, but by the galaxy. He wasn't just a war beast. He was a protector, a friend. Lily looked out at the stars again, feeling closer to Thorn than ever. She could almost hear his final roar, not one of anger or pain, but of defiance and love. I'll never forget you, Thorn, she whispered into the night, and neither will they. And with that, the legacy of Thorn, the ancient war beast who chose love over war, was sealed in the hearts of those who had heard his story. He was no longer just a creature of destruction. He was a hero, a friend, and a reminder that even the darkest forces could find redemption through the power of kindness. In the weeks following Thorn's death, Lily became a symbol of hope, not just on Earth but across the galaxy. News of her bond with the war beast, Thorn, spread far and wide. For the first time in many years, the humans and even the Chiron began questioning the nature of war and violence, inspired by the story of a creature that defied its programming for a simple, yet profound connection. Lily was invited to speak at the Galactic Council, a gathering of representatives from numerous species, many of whom had once been enemies of the Chiron. The story of Thorn had reached their ears as well, and it was shaking the foundations of galactic diplomacy. What if, they wondered, creatures once thought to be beyond saving could change? Standing in front of the council, Lily, still so young but wise beyond her years, spoke from the heart. Her small frame seemed out of place among the towering beings in the room, but her voice held a power they couldn't ignore. Thorn wasn't just a beast, she began, her voice trembling slightly but gaining strength as she continued. He was my friend. He could have eaten me. He was supposed to. But instead he chose to protect me. Why? Because I showed him kindness, something he probably hadn't known in centuries. The room was silent, every delegate hanging on her words. We were different, from different worlds, and we didn't speak the same language, but we understood each other. And in the end, Thorn sacrificed himself for me, for my freedom. He gave his life so that I could be here today, and I think that's a lesson for all of us. If Thorn could choose love over hate, protection over destruction, then maybe we all can. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful. Lily's words resonated with them deeply. The Chiron delegation, who had long been a source of tension, remained silent but attentive. They too were processing what the story of Thorn meant for them and their future. As Lily stepped down from the podium, applause erupted from the audience. It wasn't just a celebration of her speech. It was a recognition of the power of change, of redemption. Thorn's legacy had taken root and it was beginning to grow. After the speech, several representatives approached Lily offering their support. They wanted to learn more about what had happened on the Chiron warship, to understand how such a powerful bond had formed between a human child and an ancient creature of destruction. The galaxy was changing, and Lily was at the heart of it. Years passed, and Lily grew into a strong, wise woman, known across the galaxy as the girl who tamed the war beast. Thorn's story became a legend, told on planets light years apart, passed down through generations. The story of a beast bred for destruction, who chose love and sacrifice, became a symbol of hope for a galaxy long plagued by war. Lily dedicated her life to ensuring that Thorn's legacy lived on. She became a diplomat, traveling between worlds, helping foster peace where once there had been conflict. Whenever she spoke to leaders or soldiers or even children, she always told the same story, about how a little girl and a massive war beast formed an unbreakable bond. On the 10th anniversary of Thorn's sacrifice, a memorial was unveiled on Earth. It was a towering statue of Thorn standing tall and proud, with Lily by his side, her hand resting on his snout. The statue was placed in the center of a peaceful garden, a place where people could come to reflect on the lessons of Thorn's life. Lily stood before the statue on the day of its unveiling. A crowd gathered around her. She took a deep breath as she looked up at the towering figure of Thorn, his stone eyes gazing out at the stars. "I wish you were here to see this," she whispered, her heart full of emotion. "You'd be proud of what you've done, of how much you've changed the galaxy." As she placed a hand on the statue's cold stone, a soft breeze stirred, carrying with it a sense of peace. Lily closed her eyes, imagining Thorn's presence beside her, the comforting rumble of his breath, the warmth of his massive form. She could almost hear his roar in the distance, not one of anger or fear, but of pride and love. Thorn had changed everything, not just for her, but for the entire galaxy. And as Lily stood there, remembering her friend, she knew that his sacrifice would never be forgotten. The galaxy had learned to see beyond fear, beyond violence, and to choose connection over destruction. Thorn's legacy lived on in the stars, in the hearts of those who remembered him, and in the peaceful future that he had helped create. And in that moment, Lily felt at peace, knowing that Thorn would always be with her, his roar echoing through the cosmos, a reminder that even the fiercest creatures could find redemption, and that love could change the course of history.